Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Eve Stern, Director of the Center. You can't hear me? Okay.
Just bring it closer.
Okay, I'll try that again. Good afternoon. Is that any better? Good, welcome. I'm Eve Stern, Director of the Center for the Humanities, and I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of the Humanities Center and the Kingston Chamber Music Festival, with whom we've partnered on this wonderful event. This afternoon's panel on music and storytelling on Broadway is part of the Center for the Humanities' year-long series, Innovations in Storytelling, in which we celebrate the art of storytelling, which of course is an endeavor at the heart of the arts and humanities. I'm truly grateful to Beth Eder and Anna Gray from the Kingston Chamber Music Festival, as well as my assistant Laura Stifler and Professor Mark Conley and his colleagues in the URI Music Department for making this happen. It's been a pleasure to partner with the Chamber Music Festival on this, and I hope it's just the first of many collaborations. This afternoon, I'm super excited to welcome Jessie Ray Leich and Nick Jemo to URI, who have traveled up from New York to talk about their work as Broadway pit musicians. As URI's College of Arts and Sciences celebrates its 75th anniversary this year, it's an opportune moment to celebrate some of our most distinguished graduates. Well, this event has real personal resonance for me. I grew up in New York City, going to Broadway musicals with my family, and going to see a show was a major highlight. It was always so exciting and a highlight of the year. And after every show we saw, we would buy the record, and I would listen to it endlessly, memorizing every lyric and singing along. And in fact, when I took my kids to see Annie at PPAC about 10 years ago, I was shocked to see that I still remembered every word of every song. So it's going to be such a treat to hear Nick and Jessie Ray talk about the insider's perspective and all the work that goes into making these musicals happen. Now I'd like to welcome Dr. Beth Eder, Executive Director of the Kingston Chamber Music Festival, who will tell you more about our panelists.
Thank you so much, Eve. I guess I'd like to start by saying this is what can happen when you just walk across the street. It's exactly what happened. We struck up a conversation, and the germ of this idea was planted, and now it's come to fruition with help from many. And I have to take time right now to acknowledge my assistant Anna Gray, who has written the most marvelous article that will appear in the alumni magazine and is on the URI website right now. Would you please thank her together with me? I'd also like to thank Mark Conley, who has been just wonderful in the planning of all this and working things out detail by detail. And of course, our guests, Nick and Jessie Ray. And it's just so delightful to have you here. On this homecoming weekend, what could be more appropriate than having these amazing graduates of this university come back home and share with us their stories. Let's acknowledge.
It's very special for us, so thank you all for being here.
So, without further ado, we're going to get... Oh, and David. Is David... David's not here. Oh, there. Please stand up, David. This is David Gilliland. And he and two other members of the department faculty are going to join us later in the program. I want to say an enormous thank you to David, who's here to be the collaborative pianist for this, and can't wait to hear it. We're going to start off with a piece of music, which I think is appropriate, and I'd like to ask Nick first to set it up by explaining where this particular piece falls in the plot. And I'm sure there's a reason that you chose it. So could you tell us about that?
So, is this on? Can you hear me? Yeah, good. How about now? Oh, there we go. So, I'll be playing a piece by a song in the Phantom of the Opera. How many of you have seen Phantom? Yeah, nice, okay. So I chose this piece, one, because I love Phantom. It was the first show I ever saw at PPAC. And I had been involved in the show for 14 years, first as a sub, then as 9 years as a regular until we closed. I chose this particular song because I think it's one of the most beautiful songs in the show. It's "Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again," and it's later in the second act where the Phantom has been wreaking havoc on pretty much everyone in the theater, and everyone is trying to get Christine to play an integral part to trap the Phantom so they can, catch him and, do God knows what. And she's hearing all this noise, and she doesn't really know. She's a little bit confused. She's like, in my opinion, she's like kind of like into the Phantom a little bit, but also like, he's killed people, so I'm not sure I should be into this guy. And she doesn't know what to do, so she goes to the mausoleum where her father is, and he has passed away, and she sings this song, "Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again," wishing he was here to give her guidance.
Wasn't me.
So while Nick comes back down, since this is all about storytelling, both of these musicians have a story to tell, and part of that is their career path. And so I'm going to ask if each of you will tell about your path from URI to Broadway. I somehow imagine that you didn't receive your diploma, walk across, and your first job offer came. So maybe, Jesse Ray, you can start while Nick gets his breath here.
So for me, well, let me preface it with every musician that ends up on Broadway, they kind of have their own path in. Some people go to New York and are involved in other things and then network, and somebody asks them, hey, would you ever be interested in doing this show? And they're like, sure. And then they kind of just fall into Broadway. Whereas me, while I was a student here, I was a music education major, but I always knew I wanted to be a player. I always wanted to play drums. I started playing when I was like 4 years old. My mom just put me into drum lessons, and I just, throughout the years of just being heavily involved with music, I always knew I wanted to perform. And when I was like a junior, senior here at URI, I started seeing more shows that were coming through Providence or Boston, Hartford, and then the light bulb went off, and I was like, this is a job that I would love to do, and real people do this. So let me see if I can figure this out. So I went searching for it, and I found online on playbill.com, which is like the hub for all things Broadway, for, you know, who's in this show, what show, where they might have auditions for actors. And then I saw that there is a musicians little tab there, so I said, oh, clicked on that. And for some non-equity touring, they hire for musicians just through that website. So I was like, oh, I see 3 auditions here that I could submit just from home. So I did that. This was 2017. I graduated that May. And that summer, I sent in online auditions for 3 shows that were going out. I know one was Dirty Dancing on tour, another one I can't remember, and Motown the Musical. So I submitted for all of those. And lo and behold, like a couple weeks later, I get an email back from Motown, and they were interested. So I was like, oh my goodness. So they had sent me audition material. Well, at first it was, they wanted me to just send in video recordings of myself playing, a couple different styles. So I sent that to them. And then they said that we want you to play 3 songs from this show, record that for us. So I did that, sent it, didn't hear anything for a while. And then like a month or so later, they asked me if I would do the tour. And that is exactly how I got my foot into the door of this. And now from that, it's all about networking, you know? So I did that tour, everything went well, and then that tour led to another one, and then that tour led to another one, and then that led me to Broadway. So that's how my arc kind of went about. So that's my story.
What show got you?
Oh, thank you.
What show did you come to Broadway? What show brought you to Broadway?
So the one that brought me to Broadway was, well, it was going to be K-pop. That was going to be the first show that was going to bring me to Broadway, but that was like, you know, during pandemic times that was being developed, so it kept getting pushed back. And then I ended up doing Mr. Saturday Night. That was my first show on Broadway, and I got that just through the networking that I had done through touring. I didn't audition or anything. It was just, you know, from all the work that I had done, this team found my name. They asked somebody who's pretty big in the business, who's a music orchestrator for shows. They asked him about me, and I owe him so much. He was like, yes, absolutely, hire him. And that's how I got the job. Yeah.
How about you, Nick?
So the first thing is there are no auditions for musicians on Broadway. The actors, they have auditions. Can everyone hear me okay?
Is this better?
Okay. So there's no audition, so everything is word of mouth, which means you have to be, you know, a good person to work with. So for me, after URI, I went to New York City to get my master's at the Manhattan School of Music. And while I was there, my teacher, who is in the New York Philharmonic, we had weekly rep classes where 4 trumpets would play all the orchestral rep and really learn how to play in a section together. So it was the class that I learned the most, got me the most prepared to be an actual professional musician was that class. And when he would go on tour with the New York Phil, the sub-teacher, who is one of the most prominent classical freelancers in the city, he would sub for him. So over time, he got to know me and he got to know my playing, and he recommended me to his friend and colleague, who at that time was the principal trumpet at Mary Poppins on Broadway. and if it wasn't for him recommending me and for the trumpet player at Mary Poppins taking a chance on me, you know, that was my foot in the door. And from there, I did a good job. And then Phantom needed a sub. Because, you know, subs come and go. Subs get their own shows, or they move out of town sometimes, or so you're kind of rotating door of different sub players. And they were, or some people just can't do the date, and you have a wedding to go to, and you just need someone, so you have to bring someone else in. I don't know what the reason was, but for Phantom, he asked his friend at Mary Poppins recommended me to Phantom, and then the ball just kept rolling from there. So yeah, that's how I got going.
So Nick, you mentioned, of course, at the master's level, that's where you begin to make your connections. That's where you begin to work with people who are in the business, and you start to get the experience of learning how to work with other people, as you said. But your time at URI would have been your foundational time, right? This is where you got the foundations that you moved on. And so I was given the question, which I'm very interested in. Looking back, what were some of the aspects of your time at URI that were most foundational to your success as a professional musician? So we'll start with you.
For me, you know, looking back, I had a lot of freedom to do the things I wanted to do here. So, for example, every music major has to take piano class. You have to be somewhat proficient on piano. I never played piano before. I came here, I fell in love with piano. I became a bit obsessed, practicing all the time. And the piano teacher here, Manabu, who is out there somewhere.
He's out there. Where is he? Manabu? Up, over there.
He recognized that I was maybe a bit obsessed with the piano and wound up giving me weekly lessons. I wasn't a piano major. I probably, you know, wasn't very competent, you know, compared to, you know, a real pianist. But he offered me weekly lessons. I was in chorus with you, Mark, as a non-voice major. And I learned a ton from you. And I learned, so those things that I had the freedom to say, I want to do a chorus. Okay, let's come do a chorus. And that has to do with, you know, it's being nurtured, but it's also being given the chance, whereas like, you know, it's a small student to teacher ratio. You have the opportunities to do these things. And kind of the world was my oyster musically. I could just, you know, and I wound up playing, a Chopin piece at Music Convocation, which is our weekly performance. Looking back, I don't think, I was a bit crazy to do that because, I don't know, I was like not in my right mind to play a piano piece in front of it. Like, I don't know. And then I wound up playing another Chopin piece as my encore to my senior recital. And Manabu had accompanied me for my recital, and then I played an encore. And the piano, I mean, it's those type of things that really made me grow and make me become a well-rounded musician. Yeah.
How about you, Justin?
Yeah, so for me, there were a few things. I mean, just the amount of different ensembles that I could play in, being a drummer. You know, I came in here as a jazz major, and but the first thing that I did was the URI drumline, and that was something that like just changed my life because I was always obsessed with the movie Drumline that came out in like 2002. I remember being in middle school, like teaching myself that, and I did that at a 7th grade talent show. So then when I saw there was a drumline here, I was like, oh yeah, and it was so wonderful. And playing in the different ensembles that I did drumline, I did jazz combos, I did big band, I did wind ensemble, I did, you know, as many things as I could do. And I think one of the most valuable lessons that I learned here was learning people skills, professional people skills with my peers. Because just like Nick said, you know, if you're not like a decent person to work with, like that it makes everything so much more difficult. And like working environments, it's like learning what a healthy working environment looks like and what an unhealthy working environment looks like with your peers. You know, I think I learned a lot of that. And You know, I think that is just so important of going out into the real world. And that's just not something that you necessarily learn in the classroom, you know? That's just about being, you know, immersed in the college experience and, like, you know, playing in these different ensembles. Just be as, you know, involved as you can. And learning to gravitate towards your people, I think that was a vital lesson that I learned here. And I also had access, like going to school here, to the Newport Playhouse. And all throughout my 4 years of going to school here, on Friday and Saturday nights, I would play drums at the cabaret at the Newport Playhouse Dinner Theater. And that was really my first introduction into, like, theater, professional theater working environment, and learning about theater culture and hanging out with the actors, and it just, I fell in love with it. I always had a blast when I was working there. It was nothing but laughs and playing music, and that's all I want to do. So that was just amazing to have access to while going to school here. And then the third thing is, after my freshman year, I transitioned from jazz to music education because, you know, just working in that environment with a lot of my older peers, I could sense that it wasn't something that was fitting for me, and I needed to make a shift. And making that shift was so life-changing to me, and, you know, so then therefore my focus was in percussion. So I got to do a lot of percussion, and I had 3 different teachers every year that taught me something. I had Rob McEwen my sophomore year, I had Christopher Smith my junior year, and Kyle Forstoff, who's now the percussion teacher, I had him my senior year at his first year, and each of them taught me something different. And my freshman year, I had Steve Langone, who's an amazing jazz drum set player. I learned so much from all 4 of those guys, so that was just something that I will take with me forever.
That's great. And while we're on the subject of private teachers, I did want to mention, Nick, that we have a special treat here today in that your private teacher and local legend, George Kent, is here in the audience somewhere. George, right up there. So I'm just curious, leading into the next section. Yeah, absolutely.
And I said being nurtured. My first music convocation, I played one of my all-time favorite solos, Rustiques. And George is a wonderful pianist, and he accompanied me. It was just like, it's scary playing. It's just scary, period, playing in front of people in general, in my opinion. You know, it's always scary, but especially your first time playing as a freshman, and George at the piano, it made a huge difference. I remember because he had a piano in his studio. We'd rehearse it there, and all we did was just take it on stage, you know? And it's just another example of, you know, just being nurtured, being, you know, sometimes you need your hand held a little bit, especially in the beginning to feel, you know, safe. And
That's great. So the question is, what's been the most surprising or unexpected thing about having a musical career on Broadway? What might you not have imagined when you started? And I'll start with Jesse. Ray.
Sure, yeah. For me, the most surprising has just been, you know, I've been in this for 6 years now, between the touring and just 2 years being in New York, doing it there. The most surprising thing for me has just been the amount of artists and musicians that I get to collaborate with. And it's incredible, like the amount of people that I've been able to meet these past 6 years doing these different shows, you know, and it's a beautiful thing. Like, I'm back here, you know, I'm here for a few days, and I have a bunch of friends a friend from Motown that I toured with, and I toured on this show called the Donna Summer Musical. Another friend, they both play keys. They're on the Mrs. Doubtfire tour that's coming to Providence this week, so I'm gonna get to see them, you know, so I get to always see my people, and just to get to work with them and do it at this, you know, this caliber is just, it's so special to be able to do. It's my favorite part about this is just the people and the experience that we get. It's amazing.
How about you, Nick? Most surprising?
I think the instability. I'm not sure it was necessarily surprising, but when you're going to school and you have student loans, that's future Nick's problem. You don't really think it through what has to be done to succeed. And you know, you can get a show, like for example, I subbed on Mary Poppins all the time, a lot. I was very lucky that both of those trumpet players took off a lot. So I had a lot of opportunities to go in there. And then Mary Poppins closed. And it was the first time where I was like, oh, okay, no, what am I gonna do now? And then, other shows come, but, I think it's difficult when you really have to, when you get out of school and you really have to make a living. It can be a bit shocking, especially when there are so many extraordinary players in New York. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And there's this many shows. There's just not enough to go around, and of course people sub in those shows, but even then, there's just so much talent and not enough work, so it can be difficult, it can be a bit scary, so that was a bit surprising.
I'm gonna jump in here. It is scary, and that's one of the reasons why I transitioned to music education, because I knew, okay, I can become a music teacher, I enjoy teaching, I taught individual private drum lessons all through high school and college. So I was like, I can be a teacher and I would love to learn this. And to have that as a backup, yes, I want to be a performer, but sometimes it doesn't work out. But I will also add, you just need to be strategic about it and really think about it and plan it. If you really want to be a professional musician and play and you don't want to teach, you can do it. There's no question. If you have the goods, if you have, the drive, and you have good people skills and you can work well with people and collaborate, yes, as Mark would always say, I hear your voice in my head, the answer is yes. You can do it, you can always do it. He would always say that to us, yeah, you can absolutely do it. So don't let that, scare you. You just need to be strategic about it, and what I would say, I recommend to young people that want to get into this out of college, if you can get into the touring world, non-equity work, I can talk about that for a second if that's okay, the difference between non-equity and union work. Just real quick, it's a little bit easier to get into non-equity work. There's a musicians union and an actors equity in New York, and those are the big shows that you see that are all happening in New York, and all the big shows that tour through, Providence usually. Sometimes non-equity shows will come through there, but the equity shows, it's a higher budget. Everybody on the show, is getting paid pretty well to do it, and when you're on tour, you're in a city for at least a week. On a non-equity tour, that's a tier lower. The budget is not as big, so you're not going to make as much money, and you're hitting the cities that wouldn't necessarily see theater. So you're not going to you might not go to as many cities like LA and Chicago and Miami. You're going to be in little smaller towns. We played somewhere, I want to say in New Bedford on a non-union tour, and then somewhere, very small towns throughout the country. It's easier to get into that, and that's where they have the online auditions. So if you can do that, that's a way in, and you can go, you can tour, you can save money, and then when the time's right, you can come to New York, and now you already have that cushion of some money that you saved up. That's what I did. So you're not scrambling when you get there, I have no money, you know what I mean? So you do not need to be right in New York or go straight to LA or somewhere straight from school. There's other ways to get into it.
Well, this is just so fascinating, and so we're going to move into the section that is about your life now in the Pitt Orchestra. But before we do that, I have one last question to ask about the background and how you got there, and that is the Kingston Chamber Music Festival scholarship. You both won it, and just a word about how did that influence you?
For me, it was a scholarship, so it gave me more means to be here and to work here and be immersed in all of this here that we have at URI. So that meant everything to me. I think it was 2016 the year that I received that, and things like that. It means so much to people like Nick and I, who really want to get into this and do this as a career. To have that just makes our lives so much easier. So we thank you guys for that, for recognizing us and for having us back. It means so much.
Not bad for your resume either, right?
Not bad, not bad. Thank you.
And Nick, you were the first winner, yes?
I was, which makes this next thing seem more understandable, I hope. I just don't really remember. It was almost 20 years ago. I do remember feeling very grateful, obviously. Winning any scholarship is amazing. And I know that money went to a horn. I just don't know one I put the money to. But it was definitely probably one of the. I think it might have been the pick right there. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's amazing winning a scholarship. The first one, I mean, I didn't even know it existed, so it was a complete surprise to me. Yeah, I mean, the recognition it's just another confidence booster.
Well, that's wonderful. So now we want to start asking some questions about really how does it feel being in the pit. And Nick, I'm going to ask you first. Mary Poppins was your first show. Can you take yourself back to remembering what that was like? Were you nervous? Tell us about it.
I was nervous. Very, very nervous. I had just like an extreme itch to play professionally. You know, when you're a student, you're playing a lot of gigs, but they're not union gigs. They're not professional gigs. You're not playing with other professionals. So I was just, yeah. I mean, when I got the call to play on that show, I mean, I prepared like crazy. It was a 2-hour, 45-minute show with a lot of playing, 2 trumpets. I started on second trumpet, which happens most of the time. And I remember the first trumpet, who, you know, I owe a lot to. He really set me up for success because you know, you can give someone the book, and you can give them the recording. Now there's conductor cam videos. It's a little easier, but then it was just like a recording, and then you have the book and learn the show. But I remember him like kind of me talking through it. Like, this is an important part. This is not necessarily a solo, but you know, an exposed part here, an exposed part there. Pay attention here. The tempo can be weird here. And I like to do that with all my subs too, no matter how experienced they are, because you want them to succeed right off the bat. No one plays a perfect first show, like, ever, but you want them to, you know, you want the conductor, it reflects on you, first of all, and you want them to succeed and keep subbing for you. So he really kind of showed me the way to how to do that. But I remember the first show, I wasn't playing with him. I was subbing for him. And I remember feeling disconnected with the audience because in that pit, the New Amsterdam Theater, where Aladdin is now, you can't see, or at least from my spot, you couldn't really see the audience. So I felt disconnected. There was a vent. I remember there's a vent here, and the scent of Red Lobster, which was right next door, would waft in, and it was just like, in that theater, is like famous for that, because it's like, oh my God, it's just that smell. So anyway, I remember that, and I remember the conductor I played with that first show. It turns out I just did a show with him recently. He was my first conductor, but he was like the assistant conductor. I don't even think he was actually a full-time member of that show, so I had never seen him. And each conductor has their own way of doing things, and there was one moment where I almost played in a complete hole. It would have just been me, and I remember the trumpet player turned to me and said, that would have been bad. And it went well, and then at intermission, the actual conductor was in the theater. He was in his office, not conducting that show, and I remember him coming in right at intermission and saying, oh no, it wasn't intermission, it was sometime during the show, downtime of the show, and he said, hey Jason, how's Nick doing? And, you know, that's just like his sense of humor. And he's like, he was good. The show ended. I got another date later, so I knew I passed. But I remember feeling like, this is weird. Like, I'm playing, but I don't feel like there's an audience here. I was like kind of in my own world. It was kind of a weird, but I remember very, very vividly, and it went well.
Am I right that the music of Mary Poppins is deceptively difficult in some
I don't know
areas?
Yes, it's difficult. There's a lot of, it's a lot of playing on your face. It's kind of brutally tiring. But there's also a lot of like offbeat stuff. You're just like, bup, 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 and that gets really tiring. And like, if you're not careful about your breathing, you can kind of like almost hyperventilate, and it is tiring. Even the second book is demanding. The lead book is even is much harder. But I remember thinking, I don't know how I'm going to ever play this lead book. It is just too much. And then I did it. And then I thought, I don't know how I'm ever going to do this. And then you do it. And then it's kind of a pattern. You just kind of like rise to the occasion or figure out a way to do it. And yeah, I absolutely, I loved playing that show. I loved it.
Great music. So, and we're going to hear a piece from that show in a second, but before we move on to that, I want to give Jessie Ray the opportunity to talk about what it's like when you can't see the audience. You just talked about that a little bit, Nick, and that was actually the next question. So, because that's interesting. I mean, you're in the dark.
Sure.
Does it affect your ability to connect?
It doesn't affect my ability to connect, but me personally, I love being on stage. Like, I like to like see everything that's going on and like be immersed in it and like see the crowd. I love that. Just like energy-wise, it gives me so much more, oomph. Because, sometimes like once you're playing a show like 100, 200, 300 times and you're in that pit, like, then it's amazing to do. But like, it becomes a job and you're doing these shows 8 times a week. So like you are on total autopilot by that point. You can be, playing a game, doing this, doing that, whatever. And then, oh, here's my cue. Okay, let's play. So it's just a totally different vibe. I sub at this show right now called Titanique. It's a show Off-Broadway, very funny. It's a 1-act show. It's a comedy spoof of the plot of Titanic, the movie, and it's all music of Celine Dion. It is, and Celine Dion herself is taking you through the show. It's hilarious. And we are on stage. It's 4 of us, and it gives me so much more energy, like being in it with them. I love that so much.
Is that the same for you, Nick?
I mean, I haven't been on stage on a Broadway show. I mean, I've been on stage before, and there's pros and cons. You definitely like are more immersed, and you're definitely more connected, and it's more fun. But like, I personally played Phantom almost 3,000 times, which
3,000?
Yeah, almost 3,000 times.
Bro, I never played a show 3,000 times.
And that wasn't that much compared to my other colleagues. The other trumpet player had played it almost over 10,000 times. So
yeah, it was there. How long was it there?
35 years.
35 years.
So
I got to get on a show like that.
I know. In that case, I wouldn't have wanted to be on stage because I read so many books. I could do so much. I could get so much work done in that particular show. And if I was on stage, you really can't do that. You have to be. So it kind of depends. I mean, it's artistically speaking and musically speaking, yeah, it's fun to be on stage. Yeah.
It's just a
but
different
for the
vibe.
rest of life,
Yeah,
not so bad to be in the
goof
pit.
around, which you're playing the same show 8 times a week for, hopefully a long time, and you like to goof around. It's just it keeps things fresh.
You got to keep it light. You got to make it light, especially when you're playing the same show that many times. You have to. You have to. So.
Well, this does seem like the perfect segue to something from Mary Poppins, which is going to be.
Yes. So I'll do something from Mary Poppins. I'm sure many of you know Mary Poppins already, but I'll be doing a Spoonful of Sugar, which the kids that Mary Poppins is nannying has just destroyed the kitchen. She's basically saying you can do these difficult tasks if you just have a positive outlook. But the interesting thing about this, the backstory on this tune is when Mary Poppins was being made, the 2 songwriters, the Sherman brothers, someone, maybe Walt Disney, maybe someone else, wasn't crazy about one of the tunes that they wrote in the show. And they said, we need something snappier, So one of the Sherman brothers went home one day later that week, so the story goes, and asked his, I think, 5-year-old son, how was school today? And he said, I got the polio vaccine. And he knew he was scared of needles, and he said, oh, did it hurt? And he said, no, they put it on a cube of sugar. And we took it that way. It was obviously the oral polio vaccine. And I guess a light bulb went off his head, spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, and that's where the song came from.
Fascinating.
To recognize our associate professor in collaborative piano, David Gilliland, over here.
I have a funny story about a really
Yeah.
quick anecdote. I remember playing the beginning of Mary Poppins one show, and I was playing lead, and the first trumpet had a big like office chair, like you could spin around, and often he would spin around while he was playing and stuff. And it had like a lip on the side. It was a very, very big, and it had this like, little lip. And beginning of Mary Poppins starts with a big brass fanfare, like ba ba ba, whatever, and then right after it comes this big trumpet solo, and it was played on piccolo. And I remember, and so you're playing, you do the normal fanfare on the trumpet, you pick up the piccolo, and I played the thing, and then I took the piccolo, and for whatever reason, the mouthpiece went flying in the air, and it's like, it's the only like melodic thing happening, and it landed somehow right in the lip. I looked, and it was right there, and I put it back, and I crushed the solo.
Lucky man, lucky man.
I mean,
yeah. Just watching you do that, what you did, like another thing that people don't know, like there's so much choreography, like playing in a Broadway pit, like as a trumpet player that has multiple pieces, or a low brass player that has multiple pieces they need to play, and you know, going in there, you need to make sure you know the show so well, you know exactly what to grab, when to grab it, because I mean, you have no time to guess. Second think, the show's not going to stop.
Usually you don't have to bend over to guess. It's usually right here. It's a little easier. That's a little trickier because you're standing, but yeah.
Wow, the experiences, right? Well, so let's talk a little bit about what it's like when you've got your subs around you, or maybe you have a different conductor, maybe the actors have changed, you know, the chemistry changes, I imagine. And so I'm interested to know from both of you, how much control do you have, or how much do you feel your own performance changes when everything around you changes? And is that a good thing, or is it unnerving?
Yeah, sure. In my opinion, I mean, I love it. I love like when there's new people in the pit that you haven't played with before, because that makes it more exciting to play, and it's like a little bit different. Nobody plays the same instrument the same way. Everybody has their own, you know, touch to their instrument, and I enjoy that. And I think it's just, you know, you just have to be able to adjust. And, you know, the first show when you have like a sub music director, especially, like your cueing is going to be different. Timing might be different. So on those nights you need to be really on your toes and like really be watching and focused, because the timing is going to be slightly off to what you're used to. So it's just, you just need to be prepared and to like just have your ears open on those days when there's new band members in the pit. And I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, it takes the mundane out of it. I don't think I ever played, no, actually I'm 100% sure I never played a show at Phantom where all 27 members were the permanent members. There's always at least one sub in. So you're always surrounded by different people. It depends on the pit. For me, I love seeing the new faces or the different faces. That makes it interesting. Musically speaking, it can be difficult. I know everyone has good and bad days, and it can depend on the setup and who is near you and how they influence your pitch. I mean, if you have someone behind you who's out of tune that day or not having a great day themselves, it can make your job incredibly difficult. And the exact opposite can happen, where the whole brass section is just like locked in, and you see the personnel when you walk in, you're like, oh, this is gonna be a good show probably. And if things go wrong, I can't blame anyone else but myself, because you know, I mean, it really depends on. It can be hard musically when you're, but like you said, everyone brings their own flavor to it. So yeah, it takes the mundane out of it for sure.
Makes it more exciting.
I have to ask a part two to this one. What makes you play your own particular solo best? Like what around you can actually inspire you to do your very best job? Or you're so locked in, you've done it so many times that, I mean, are your solos different from time to time?
I mean, like I said, good days and bad days. Some days I'm struggling to get through the show. Some days it's like a piece of cake, no problem. I think for the most part, I play this stuff like similarly, you know. But if I'm gonna play it, if the conductor wants it differently, there's usually not just one conductor for a Broadway show. There's generally one main conductor, and then others, and they all kind of have their own thing. And conductors are really important because. You know, you're doing the show, you can probably play it, you know, in your sleep after so long. But if a conductor inspires confidence and you're not like afraid to mess up, I think that's really important. You know, of course they have all the technical stuff to deal with, but if you're nervous that they're gonna get mad if you screw up or you're gonna make a face or something, it can put some undue pressure on yourself. And whereas the opposite is true if they just let you be free. And of course, who's around you. And if everything's locked in, the musicians are locked in around you, which 99% of the time is the case, you know, then it makes your job a lot easier.
Interesting. The next question has to do with when things go wrong or unexpected things. And so my own little story about this, which is one I'll never forget, is that my former student Cameron Carpenter came to solo with the Erie Philharmonic, and during the dress, he got one rehearsal and then the dress, and during the first rehearsal, he had everything all set up, was doing his concerto, and out of the back of the organ, smoke began to pour, and there was literally a fire inside the organ. And you can imagine everybody just, now there was a problem. And we had to find an in the end, we had to find a different organ, and there was only, one day to get this whole thing. So that's my contribution to this subject. Jesse Ray, let me ask you next.
Sure. A lot of things can go wrong. I remember one time being on tour, you're in the pit, and we have headphones on or in your monitors to hear everything that's going on, and we have our own mixers so we can level everything out, piano, guitar, bass, drum, everything, and we have a click track that we play with, so that's basically a metronome. So when you start the song, you get a little count in 3, 4, and you hear that in your ears. One time, my whole Aviom unit that is connected to your ears just went out during a song, and thankfully, it was deep into the tour. This was Motown, and I knew the song so well. But they could tell, I was off from the click, and I saw the conductor look at me and I was like, so he stopped the click, and we kept playing, and it was fine. But you just need to you need to think on your toes and just be ready, and you need to know your show so well so that when things do go wrong like that, you can just adjust and make things happen. Recently, I was subbing at Juliet on Broadway, and this is a very big machine of a show. So I'm always I try and be my absolute best there every time. The players there are they are next level. And it's a pop show and I have always loved pop music and always wanted to maybe play, that's a goal of mine, to play for a pop artist or a rock artist, something like that. And that's exactly what this show is. So I'm always it's got to be right here. And the last song of Act 1 is It's My Life by Bon Jovi. It's my life. If you guys know that. It's a rockin' song. Oh, no, that's all you're going to get from me. Yeah, my sight singing days are over, Mark. I'm sorry. I was playing that. We were playing it, last song, and I hear my snare. It's no longer cracking. It's dunk, 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 and I'm what's going on? The music director looks at me, and I try and fix it, but oh no, the bottom of the snare had cracked. So, it is what it was. Thankfully, the drummer that I subbed for there, Sam Merrick, he's amazing, he had a backup snare there, so during intermission, we could switch it out, and it was fine. But yeah, moments like that, you gotta just roll with it and know your show well.
There's so many things that go wrong.
Yeah, you already talked about the mouthpiece.
Yeah,
what else?
Valves that are sticking for no reason, and you have to try to pull up every time. You have to try to pull up your valve that's sticking. There's instruments that have, I heard one of our harp player broke a string, and I don't know if you've ever heard of a harp string break. I hadn't, but it was a gunshot. Yes, it was man, it was it'll scare you to see. There are so many, instrumental problems that can happen. The trombone player behind me one time, the soldering just came off of his trombone, and he was trying to play, but also tie it back together at the same time. He's and I can hear him back there F-bomb, F-bomb, F-bomb. Like really upset. I'm like, don't turn around, it's not gonna like help anything. I was like, hilarious to me. It's hilarious to everyone around you, like.
Yeah, it's funny when it doesn't happen to you, but when it happens to you, oh, it's just. Oh God, it was a terrible night that night. I cracked that snare.
When as an example of everyone loving the pain you're going through is like when the trumpets, when me and the trumpet player would make a really clamor note, the keyboard player on the opposite end of the pit would hold up a scorecard that said 10. like everyone in New York City didn't just hear me clam that note. He had to, and of course you just have to laugh it off. It sucks. Things go. I mean, but like, yeah, of course there's so many issues. There's also issues that happen in the show that you have no control over. Like, it's usually like automation. Like things aren't moving. Trap doors are remaining open, which is a hazard and a danger. So they have to turn off the show. The sound systems, it rarely happens, but sometimes they just say, sorry. Actually, at Sweeney Todd, I'm subbing there now. I wasn't at this show, but they just had to shut. The automation was completely out, and they basically just said, sorry, well, we're going to refund everyone's money, but we're also going to do like a little sits probe for 20 minutes, just some of the first act, just to get your money's worth. And they had the show did not go on at that performance. But most of the time it does. Most of the time, even if you have to wait a half an hour. But yeah, stuff goes wrong. Luckily, the responsibility is mostly on the conductor when things are going wrong, because they're the glue who sees on stage and there. So most of the time, it's their issue that they have to fix, and then you just do your best to if people are off or something's going on, or you just do your best to adjust. But it's fun. It makes things fun.
Great stories.
Well, so that leads to the idea that there are these double stories going on, right? There's what's happening on stage, and then there's the story of everything that's going on in the pit, right? And so the music moves the plot forward, intensifies the experience, tells the story, right? And yet much of the music making is happening unseen to the audience, right? And there's this entire thing that's going on. It's usually acknowledged at the play out, right? I mean, there are some people who stick around, and that must be gratifying. Yes. But how does it feel during the show to be a big part of that, to be unseen, but to be so important? How do you manage that, how that feels? I'll start with you, Nick.
For me, I don't care for like to get any like recognition, or like it's nice when people come, but the thing is like the actors are working their butts off on stage, and they deserve all the attention that they get, because ultimately, if something is going wrong if I'm messing up, no one is going to know besides my colleagues. If something is going on up there, the actors, it's their face, it's their, so there is a level of responsibility that comes along with that. I get enough satisfaction. I love walking into the theater past the line of patrons that are about to see us, and walking to the stage door, and then coming out and coming out with them and hearing them talk about the show and the liveliness. That brings me a lot of satisfaction, knowing that I was a part of it. Whether every once in a while, saying, "Oh, musician, great job." I love that. I love being recognized for sure, but it's not something that I wish I got more of, because I actually think it's well balanced. Like I have pressure, but for the most part, the audience it's not my face out there, and I love just seeing the patrons at a distance, quietly, kind of moving in between them and hearing their thoughts, but being anonymous also. Yeah.
Well, so you've had experience with both, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've been on stage where you're actually a part of the action and being in the pit where it's a whole different story. So can you tell about the difference?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I mean, sure, I love being on stage, and yeah, it's nice when people recognize what you're doing, but that's not what it's about for me. Like, I just love, the energy of being on the stage. But either way, if I'm off stage, on stage, whatever, like, I just love being a part of this, like, this puzzle, this whole thing. It's a huge, huge puzzle, right? It's not just the actors on stage that are working. I mean, and musicians are not the only unsung heroes of, like, shows that you go see. And this goes for Broadway shows that you see at PPAC. This goes for concerts that you see at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. At whatever show that you're seeing, there are hundreds and thousands of brains that have, and hearts and souls that have gone into making this thing that you're receiving happen. And I think that is just, like, the most rewarding thing of being a part of shows like this. You're part of this machine. It's a unit all in sync together, and it's all happening live in real time. Like, there's nothing that beats that, in my opinion. So that's my favorite part, of being a small little part of this big thing that's happening and that you're watching and enjoying.
It's true. We do get more recognition than the pyro,
Yeah,
the
the
pyro
crews.
guy,
Yeah.
the sound engineer. Like, they are anyone on the crew who is building the set well before actors even start rehearsing. I mean, they are, like, in there from day one. The musicians don't come until, like, 2 weeks before the show opens. The cast has been rehearsing for months, and the crew has already been loading in well before that, and they're going to be there after loading out.
Yeah, especially
They don't get any recognition.
Yeah, especially the crews on tours. Those people, they are the heroes of these things. These shows would not happen without them. They, after the show, the actors get to go hang, do whatever. The musicians get to go hang. Oh no, the crew will be there. They will be working till 3 a.m. Then they get on a bus. They go to the next city, and they're setting up at 6 a.m. maybe for the next day, for the next show. And they're like, they don't sleep. So yeah. There's so many people. If you're not a musician or not a singer, but you love Broadway or shows and, like, would like to, like, work with them, oh my goodness, there's so many roles that you can be a part of and do.
Well, I have a feeling that this is probably part of why both of you are so successful, is that you have this attitude, this humility that goes along with, what you do. And that's so impressive. I want to ask you what it's... There must be some examples that you can think of where the music, though, just changes everything. I'm thinking, I read, of course, Anna's wonderful story, and about the opening scene in Phantom, for example, and you describe, all this, like, everything changes in this one moment in time, and then you've got the high C, that is a pivotal point. Just describe that.
Sure. So I'll give you a different example, but a very similar one. It's also in Phantom, and it's also the same exact melody. It's the bum, 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 which is like the Phantom's, melody. And it comes in a few times when he's really messing shit up. Like, he's, like, either murdered someone or, like, crashed the party at Masquerade in that instance. And there's a scene in the second act when they're trying to, like, trap the Phantom, and there's an opera going on in the show, and Christine is there, like, as the main character, and the Phantom sneaks his way onto stage, and he's, like, in disguise with a hood, and, like, no one knows it's him because he just murdered the actual person who's supposed to be in that role. So he's, like, they're singing together, and eventually Christine is like, okay, I know this is the Phantom, so she kind of takes off his hood, and it's like, oh my God, it's a Phantom, and everyone, like, comes around and traps him, and he has nowhere to go. And as, like, a last Hail Mary, he starts singing All I Ask of You, which is the love song that her love interest, Raoul, sing to each other at the end of the first act. So it's, like, basically, like, I can be for you what this Joe Schmo is, like, I can be that. And it's, like, really, so it's, like, this love song, and then she's like, I'm gonna rip your mask off instead and show the world your disfigured face. And it's, like, the first time anyone has seen his disfigured face. So she rips off the mask, and at that moment, it goes from a love song to the same melody. Bam, ba, 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 bam, and it's also a terrifying note to come in on because you just come in on this high A, like out of complete nowhere, and then bam, 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 and then all hell breaks loose, and the strings like, and like smoke is coming off of their bows. They're like playing so much, and it basically you could have your eyes closed, and you would know kind of what's going on. You know, it's love, and then some stuff, just serious stuff went down. And that's the power of music. You don't need to be watching what's going on to know. I mean, the music is feeding you, and it's so dramatic. And did that answer your question? I forget.
Oh, completely.
Perfect.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Yes.
It's perfect.
I bet, Jessie Ray, you have an example.
Yes.
Of that.
For me, it's a show that I've just been so inspired by, and like one of the shows that made me want to get into this. So I have not played the show, but it's Wicked. How many of you have seen Wicked? All right, a good amount. It's the end of Act 1, Defying Gravity. Like that moment for me, when I saw that and heard that music for the first time, I was just like, whoa, what is happening? Like I just like had all these feelings like in my body, like just the chills like down my spine, like seeing this happen, and the music, the acting, the vocals, the what's happening from the output of the band at that moment is just, it's an incredible moment, and I've been a huge fan like ever since then, and that has just given me so much inspiration to my life and gave me fuel to like, you know, really get into this, something that changed my life.
It's the goosebumps,
Yes,
right?
it is, it's the Goosies. If you get the Goosies, follow it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, I think we're about to get some goosebumps from a song that you are bringing to
cool.
us, Jessie Ray.
Sweet. Let's
Right?
get it. Let's do it.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about this piece?
Sure.
Larger Than
I'm just
Life?
gonna. I have some notes on this. I just don't want to mess up because this is a song. This is a show that I'm a sub at. So I just want to make that very clear. So I'm gonna play something. Well, two songs I'm gonna play for you from Juliet, which is on Broadway right now. And I'm the sub for Sam Merrick, who is an incredible drummer. He was the chairholder of the tour of Hamilton for like 5 years, and then now he's been at Juliet. He's incredible. So I'm gonna play the first song in the show called Larger Than Life. And if we have a second, I'm just gonna kind of explain the music of this show. So Juliet, it's what you call a jukebox musical. It's a new show it's songs that we already know. There were no original songs written for the show. They used all music of Max Martin. And if you don't know who Max Martin is, he is an incredible songwriter who has written songs that we all know and love. And these are songs from like the early 2000s to like 2010s that we're dealing with in this show. So he wrote for Britney Spears, Katy Perry, the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. I mean, the list goes on. Kesha, so many people, and he's still relevant today. And this show, it's a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. So the reason why they chose to take this early 2000s pop music, pop stars, from major pop stars, is because William Shakespeare at the time was pop. So they wanted a modern retelling of this. And what better way than to use Max's music? That's just his catalog. If you look him up, it's ridiculous. So the first song, it's Larger Than Life by the Backstreet Boys, and it's the introduction of William Shakespeare at the show. It's the first viewing of Romeo and Juliet. So they're introducing Shakespeare, and he comes down, and we hit Larger Than Life because he was and is larger than life. So here we go. Hello. I also wanted to warn you also, I'm going to be playing the drums, and I'm going to be playing to tracks through the audio system here, so it's going to be quite loud. It's going to be louder than it was, so just brace yourselves. I'll warn you when I'm about to start.
alright when you're screaming my name. Alright. But let me tell you now, there are prices to fame. Alright. So good to be here. Welcome everyone. All of our time spent in flashes of light. All you people, can't you see, can't you see how your love's affecting our reality? Every time we're down, you can make it right, and that makes you larger. Looking at the crowd and I see your body sway. Come on. No, 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 thank the people, they are why we're here. All of your time spent keeps us alive. All you people, can't you see how your love's affecting our reality? Every time we're down, you can make it right, and that makes you larger than life. Every time we're down, yeah, you can make it right, yeah, that's what makes you larger than life. That makes you larger, that makes you larger than life.
So clearly that's a different style of music than we have been dealing with up to this point, and that sort of leads us into our next section. I realize that you may not have a choice necessarily, but do you find yourself drawn more to the classic shows or the shows with the larger pits versus the newer pop shows, or do you feel like it doesn't matter, it's just what you are orchestrated for? Do you have choices, preferences? Nick, while Jesse Ray gets his breath here.
Performing or
Yeah, do you
or-
have preferences? Do you have...
Yeah, I mean, for performing, like you said, I'm a certain type of player who's going to be hired for a specific type of show. I don't think there's no trumpet in Juliet, right?
No trumpet.
Yeah, I mean, a show like that probably isn't going to have trumpet. It's going to be more not just classics, but like more standard rep in general. So I guess if I have to choose, I tend to prefer ones that I'll be hired for. But as a Broadway fan, I like it all. I love the classics. I love all the revivals, but I also love new work that's truly original, which is fairly rare, I feel like now, to have a truly original show with including music, including staging, including story. It's very, very rare. Most of that is because it's a huge, huge risk for the producers, who are most likely not going to make their money back in the first place. So it's understandable, but yeah, I mean, I love new stories, and I love the new stories that are coming out about underrepresented groups that are, there's a show right now, Here Lies Love, about the political scene in Philippines, the Marcos family, and it's all Filipino cast, and that stuff is necessary, but also really interesting to see as an audience member, to have something different to see. Yeah.
Repeat your question one more time for me.
Well, just what sort of shows have you been drawn
yes.
to?
Oh, of course.
If you had a choice,
Yep.
and I realize you don't always.
Yeah, so for me, I love being able to morph, like as a drummer, like it's cool, I can morph and like do different things. Like I'd be a part of the pop show, like I'd be a part of, a more classic show, like even like Mr. Saturday Night. Am I echoey? Oh, Jacob, I think I'm coming, yeah, thank you. So anyway, I love all of it. I really do. But my heart and my soul, like what I grew up on, is like what I'm playing for you right now. I have just always loved pop music and rock music, and being a kid and loving all that. Like I always loved the Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, all of these things that Max Martin wrote. So this is an absolute dream come true for me to play something like this. So that this is my heart and soul is really in this stuff. But I love to be able to morph and do all styles of music.
He's reminded me I'm going to revise my answer. I love anything with a lush orchestral score. That's what like a Phantom, like a Les Mis. That's personally what I prefer. I'm an orchestral guy at heart. Before anything Broadway, my life was filled with orchestral music. So yeah, those are the shows with the big orchestras and big, juicy scores yeah.
So that leads right into the next question, which is the changes that we see happening to orchestra pits. This has been happening for quite some time, and even some of the older shows like Sweeney Todd used to be done with the full orchestra, and now sometimes the parts are condensed or some parts are taken by synth. So what changes have you seen happen to pits in your time in general on Broadway? And if we move to more pre-recorded tracks or keyboards covering more of it, what's lost? So I'll start with Jessie Ray.
Sure. Yeah, because I've been a part of a few of these shows where there's tracks involved. Like, I think there's a time and I think a place for all of it. Like technology is moving forward. There's nothing we can do about that. Like that's just gonna happen. But I think there are times and places where it works with the show, but you can't let that be the only thing that is coming out of pits, like just pre-recorded tracks. Like that's just gonna take away from the heart and soul of it, Like the reason why we love these shows so much is because we're experiencing it, the music and everything happening in real time, and you can feel the difference in your body, when you're out there in the audience receiving it. So I've been noticing that, bands are also, getting smaller. And I think that you can speak to me more about this, Nick, I'm sure. But, I think it's also a financial thing. Everything is just so expensive now. And, to make these shows happen, it's millions and millions of dollars. And then these producers, can't make, what they put out. And then these shows close early because everything is so expensive. So I think that's a part of the reason why these bands are, some of them are dwindling down a bit to cut some of that. I don't know if that's the case. So, it's just, I think there's a way that we can incorporate all of it together. And a great example of it is Juliet, that's been so successful. They orchestrated this show with 9 band members in mind. There's a string section. It's cello, 2 violins, and viola. There's a bass player, guitar, drums, and 2 keys. And in addition, there are tracks on top of that. So that just, it elevates it to a higher level, to have some of that with the drummer playing over it. It's so cool. And I was also a part of a show called K-Pop that happened last fall. And this show, it was a very small band, 3 of us. It was only 2 keys and me on drums. There no bass, no guitar, no anything else. And that show, we were in previews for a month and a half, and then we officially opened, and we were officially open for 2 weeks, and then the show closed. And to add to what Nick said about these new shows happening that are bringing in more representation for people that maybe wouldn't have the chance to do Broadway shows, or people that haven't had the means to do it. K-pop is an exact example of that. I was so excited to be a part of K-pop because on the Something Rotten tour that I did a few years before, I did a month in Korea. We were in Seoul, South Korea, and I got to experience the culture there for a month, and I fell in love with it. I loved it so much, made so many friends there, and then to have the chance to do K-pop with an all-Korean cast was so exciting for me, and I couldn't wait to do it, and it was just so heartbreaking when it didn't work out. And I think a big reason why it didn't work out, one of the reasons, there were many factors that went into why it didn't work out, but one of them, I think, was because people could tell, it cheapens it, We need a live orchestra. That's what I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. Tracks and synth aren't inherently bad. I know I keep talking about Phantom, because I love Phantom, and it's a big part of my life, but that's a classic, right? It's a classic, and it's was opened in the 80s. I can't remember exactly what year. And that has 2 synths and a decent amount of tracks in there too. The audience doesn't know it's tracks, but there's a good amount, but it's also a 27-piece orchestra. So it's those 2 things working together. The fact is you can't hire a 100-piece orchestra or a 50-piece orchestra because the pits are too small. It's impossible. Even 27 of us in there gets tight. And that's generally the biggest pits on Broadway, around that number. So it's not inherently bad, but the problem is the trend of less and less live musicians, producers trying to use no live musicians. Also, it depends on the show. If a show is more orchestrally based with you want to hear live musicians. If it's more like pop based, you can probably get away with less live musicians because it doesn't necessarily sound, you won't be able to tell the difference. The way the sound comes through the house can be difficult. I mean, the last show that I was doing was Bad Cinderella. And there were times, I was the only trumpet, but I was playing with a synth trumpet a lot. And some of my friends were like, I could tell. And there were other times where like, I couldn't tell. I don't know what that says about my playing, but like, especially when I'm playing like on pick, when it's a very bright sound anyway, it can be hard to tell. Like, is that a real, and the technology's only going to get better. But the thing is, assume that they can make the technology sound exactly like the tone of exactly like a real human instrumentalist. What is the point? Because one, it's going to sound the exact same. Because as a keyboard player, you don't have control. You can't be expressive in the way a human being can. You'll be note perfect, but there'll be no expression because you can't. It doesn't work like that. I hope they don't come up with technology where they can actually be expressive.
Could you imagine?
No.
The way we're going, I don't know.
But so it's the human experience. What I have been through my whole life, what I'm going through that day is coming out through my instrument in some ways, in a lot of ways. And a track or a synth, it's just not the same. But again, you do need them in a Broadway pit. You do need. It fills out the sound. It just shouldn't be the main thing.
Exactly.
If you want to put a string patch in there or a percussion or whatever, it should be in addition to. But on the other hand, I do understand that these Broadway musicals are insanely expensive to produce, and they need to make their money back. It's a balance. But you need live musicians. It just,
Do you think everyone understands that? I mean, maybe that's a silly question, but I mean, do you think that the producers, the composers, the people who manage the budget, do you think that it's understood what a loss that would be to take out the human factor, even though human beings make mistakes?
That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it, like we're fallible, and it shouldn't be perfect.
Right. Yeah, it depends on the team that's working on it. I mean, like that's the thing at K-pop. Like there were people that they disagreed. Like the creative team, like they couldn't agree. Like live this tracks whatever, and so I think a lot of people do understand that. I think that are in the business do understand that, but sometimes they don't, and But it's so important in that it was just a lesson. Like being a part of that show was such a lesson. It's so important.
Yeah, I think it really depends. I mean, some producers are going to, I'll take Bad Cinderella, for example. That show did not last very long, but the producer was like at so many shows when we first opened and came down to the pit and like, have a great show, love you guys. And Andrew Lloyd Webber made it a point to hire the biggest band he could, and just kept reiterating the fact, like, live musicians are important. Like this is a pretty big pit for, we were like 16 pieces or maybe. A fairly good sized pit, and he kept, he's a champion for live music. But then some audience members, I think, care and some don't. I don't know. I assume the same for producers. Some just want to do it. The producer for Bad Cinderella, I think, clearly did it for the art and the love of it, because I don't think she expected to make much money. But I don't know. It's not speaking on her behalf, but that's what I think.
Well, I think now would be a good time to do another example of a more modern distribution of labor, so to speak, and another piece from Juliet.
Sure, let's do it. Yeah, so this song is called Show Me Love, and this is by the artist Robin. So at this part in the show, so Shakespeare's wife, who the character's name in the show is Anne Hathaway, which is just like a funny little bit in the show. And she's played by the brilliant Betsy Wolfe. She's amazing. At this point, she kind of talks to her husband, William Shakespeare, and is like, your story, Romeo and Juliet, why are you killing off these characters like this girl, Juliet? Let her have reign of her own life, So, and that's where the story transitions to Juliet, and now you're going through now maybe Juliet, even though the relationship didn't work out with Romeo, maybe she has another chance at love. So at this point in the show, her and her friends are traveling to Paris from Verona to get away, and it's the city of love, because maybe she can find love there. So this is Show Me Love.
He needs his other musical instrument.
Told that I got too much pride, too independent to have you by my side. Then my heart said, all of you can see, just wanna live for someone until he lived for me. Never thought I would find love so sweet. Never thought I would meet someone like you. Well, now I found you and I'll tell you. This love I got for you could take me around the world. Now show me love.
this ball, y'all.
It is my night out, and this is where it all begins. So baby, let me in and show me love. Baby, show me what's all about. You're the one that I ever needed. Show me love and what it's all about. All right, show me love. Oh, show me love. Show me love. Show me what it's all about. You're the one that I ever needed. Show me love and what it's all about. All right.
Okay, well, we're going to collect the forces here and gather them to play the last tune. And Jessie Ray, I thought maybe you might like to introduce this. We decided that the perfect way to end this is to let them play together, and with our illustrious pianist David Gilliland, and going to be joined by Rachel Hanauer, vocalist, and from the URI Music Department faculty, and Dr. Emmett Good. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining us, and thank you, David, once again. Let's welcome them.
Here they are.
Jessie Ray,
Yes.
go ahead, you can.
So yeah, this is from Mr. Saturday Night. So this ended up being my Broadway debut last year. Where we started March, April. So this was a movie in 1992 that Billy Crystal was in, and he also had a hand in writing the book. So he wanted to bring this to the stage. I guess he did a one-man show in New York. The name of the show is escaping me right now, but he did a play there. And at the time, he's really good friends with Mel Brooks, and I guess Mel Brooks was with the producers that show, and he called up Billy and was like, I want you to play the guy in my show, the lead character. And Billy was like, I don't want to be the sixth guy to play him. And Mel said, you won't be the sixth, you'll be the 12th. And Billy was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I guess Mel gave him the idea. He said, you know what? I love that movie you did, Mr. Saturday Night. You should make that a musical. He's like, okay, we'll see. And then these years later, they finally did it. And so the story is, in the show, Billy Crystal is a comic his name is Buddy Young Jr., and he has an amazing career. He has a primetime special on TV. His career is, going crazy, and he's very, very popular. And at the time, he had a wife and a little girl, a daughter, and his daughter's name is Susan, played by Shoshana Bean in the show, who is another incredible actress, singer, performer, and she is a past Elphaba of Wicked, for those that know Wicked, one of the Green Witches, so I was just so excited to work with her. And at this part in the show, throughout their life, Billy's character, he kind of neglected his family, and he was really into his comedy and his show and everything, so Susan had a lot of trauma with that. At this point in the show, Billy Crystal's character is in his 70s, and she is 40, his daughter, and she's kind of going through therapy. They're trying to, kind of rekindle their relationship. And this is the song that I chose. It's called Maybe It Starts With Me. And here we go.
While Jessie Ray gets set up, I just wanted to make a plug for our department and mention that all of the faculty up here are new since 2017. And that is because we are really working on reforming our curriculum to make the kind of jobs and the kind of careers for the 21st century that these two are demonstrating. And so the position in collaborative piano, Emmett Goods has brought all kinds of things to our jazz program, standing on the shoulders of giants, but he's a giant himself in getting the new sound in jazz coming along. And we now have a very healthy program in amplified voice singing, as well as our standard classical voice singing. And Rachel Hanauer is one of two of our amplified voice instructors. So, and that's a new program as of 2 or 3 years ago. It's very recent. And so we're very excited to bring this to it. And it comes to us because of alums like these two who have forged careers in Broadway and shown us what we need to do to keep our program moving forward. So we're very pleased to have these three faculty members with us.
All of my life I've lived under his shadow. Even now, fighting these fights I never can win. He gets his way right under my skin. I keep hoping one day things will be different. Don't ask how. He'll finally be the father I wished he'd be. Facing the problem logically, maybe it's time I finally see. Okay, I get it. Maybe it starts with me. Remember when he made you cry on your birthday? Yeah, well, so all these old memories dragging you down. How long you gonna lug them around? Never had much interest in being a father. Let it go. Save it up for your memoirs or set it free. Plenty of people live with pain. Don't throw their whole lives down the drain. If I'm a screw up, maybe it starts with me. Okay, so he wasn't the dad that I wanted. That's pretty clear. Well, let's be honest, I haven't exactly been daughter of the year. So here I am, starting now, starting over. Wish me luck. Somebody said as long as this life there's hope. Maybe I'll find the way I lost. I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. The way I've been going, I can't defend it. This war between us, who's gonna end it? Christ, what a concept. Maybe it starts with me.
I was just going to say a quick anecdote, really quick. It's really cool to be doing this with Rachel because when I was at school here and I was working at the Newport Playhouse on the weekends, I worked there Friday, Saturday nights. Rachel sang at the Playhouse with me like a couple of times there, so this is like a total full circle moment. So thank you for doing this.
Well, I can't imagine a more wonderful way to celebrate homecoming, can you? What a wonderful way. So we're going to take a few questions from the audience if you have some, so give us just a minute, and let's give them one more huge round of applause. Do we have any questions from the audience?
My question is for the percussionist here. Nice job, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
When you report to play in the pit, is the drum set there, or do you have to transport it every single time you go?
Oh no, it's there. Like in New York, like when there are shows there on Broadway, Off-Broadway, whatever, everything is always set there for you. Yeah. So and when I'm subbing at a show, I can organize time with the chair holder there. Like when there's nothing going on at the theater, if I need to practice something, I can go in there and practice.
So
But-
what other instruments are in the pit? So I would assume piano.
Yes, yeah, I mean, it
Percussion.
depends, show from show, it depends.
Okay.
You know, but the show that I was just showing you when I was playing with the tracks and Juliet, there's drums,
Yeah.
there's guitar, bass, a whole string section. It's cello, 2 violins, viola, and 2 keyboard players. And the conductor is playing keyboard.
Most of the string players would be bringing their own instruments, though, correct?
Yes, yeah, I believe, yeah, they all bring, yeah, and I believe, yeah, when subs come in, I think they bring their own, yeah. But sometimes, though, I know, like, the guitarists there, I'm pretty sure I think they just use, like, the guitars that are there, so you have to get used to using different instruments. That's, like, a crazy part about subbing, especially for me as a drummer, like, going to these different theaters and these different pits, and, you know, like Sam, the guy that I sub for Angela, he's way taller than me, you know, so like when I sit down at his kit, it's a totally different feel than what I would usually play, so like it took me time to get used to that, because just a few, you know, inches or centimeters of a difference makes, you know, much more, you know, it's a different feel to play, so yeah, that part of it is interesting.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes, yes, right, yeah, that must be, mm-hmm.
This is for both of you. If you guys could get hired for any Broadway show, past or present, what would it be in?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I would probably have to say Wicked.
I'm gonna be boring and say Phantom. It's just true.
That's got to be the best show to play as a brass player. I mean, that's got to be.
It's
That's gotta
fantastic,
be,
and
yeah.
there's a good amount of playing and rest, and it's just great. It's great. It's orchestrated nicely. Yeah.
Mhm.
I have a question for Nick. We went to school briefly together. I'm wondering if you ever get a chance to play orchestral music anymore, if you miss that.
Oh yeah. Yes, I do. Yeah, I play. Since I've been in New York, I've played a lot of places. Most recently, I did an opera with American Symphony Orchestra, and it's always, yeah, it's always, you know, the goal is always, as a classical instrumentalist, generally the main goal is win an orchestra job. Most people aren't like, I'm gonna be on Broadway. That's generally not how it is. But once I started getting work on Broadway and then other classical, orchestral gigs, it was just the perfect balance. But yeah, I still play with many orchestras. Yeah. Yeah, good to see you.
Let me just add to that. If you didn't grab a program out there, please do, because the bios of these 2 guys are phenomenal. So make sure you read. I didn't introduce them by listing everything they've done, but they're being very modest.
So it's a question, I guess, for both of you. If you're not in a regular show and you're not subbing, what do you do for work or not work or fun or whatever?
Yeah, for me, yeah. I mean, it's been a beautiful thing, like being able to get into this business, touring first, and like creating a wide network there of friends, because like all of those friends have since they're either still on tours or they're in New York. So you know, I've been able to work with them these whole, you know, well, this past year in particular. Like last year was my Broadway debut year. That was the first year that I was in New York doing it, and I was extremely fortunate. Like I don't know how the stars aligned that I had 2 Broadway shows literally back to back with Mr. Saturday Night and K-pop. And then once K-pop ended last December, I didn't have a main show. So this whole year I've been, you know, fortunate to be in the drum booths of Juliet subbing and Titanique subbing, but then I also do cabaret work throughout the city. There are 2 pretty big venues that do Broadway-style cabaret events called 54 Below and the Green Room 42. I've been doing work there. I've also been doing something that's really cool, workshops of new musicals. So before you even see these things that happen in front of you when they're on, you know, at PPAC or New York, it takes years to develop these shows. Like on average, it takes like 8 years to make these shows happen for the final product. So these workshops I've been doing, it's usually they'll hire a cast that comes in and they'll, you know, work through the show, test it out. They'll hire like a music director, a drummer, maybe like another rhythm section player, guitar, bass, whatever. And maybe you just do it for a week or maybe a month, and you're working, putting the show together, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, and then, a couple months later, they'll do it again. So I've been doing a bunch of those workshops for like new musicals in development this year, just trying to get my hand in as much as I can possibly be a part of.
For me, I've been lucky. I had been steadily employed for a decade, which is pretty rare in this freelance business. And now that my show closed, I'm subbing on Sweeney Todd. I have a student, and I'm waiting. Some people, get normal jobs, being a waiter, or you just make ends meet. For me, I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying the time off for now. But I don't know. Ask me in 6 months, and if I still don't have enough work, then I'll let you know. But yeah, I mean, people do all sorts of different things to make a living because, like I said before, there's just not enough work, and there's too many great players. And sometimes you just don't know why one person's getting hired and you're not. It's just you just never know what's in the minds of. There's so many factors of why you get hired. Obviously, being a good player and a team player is huge, but there are a lot of people who fit that description. So, so I'm waiting for my next show. Do you know any? Come on, that can.
Hi, it's Audrey.
Hi. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. I love you.
Oh, thank you. It's so
Both of you.
so
Oh
wonderful.
my goodness,
Yeah,
I love you both so much.
I just, first of all, so excited to see you both, and thank you for making music and telling us these wonderful stories. And you already talked a little bit about Foundation here at the University of Rhode Island, but Rhode Island has so many wonderful music venues and so many opportunities to be musical. And I wonder if you, and Jesse Ray, you mentioned a couple, and I don't know if we heard from you, Nick, but I wonder if you would just share a little bit about those other Rhode Island or regional music experiences that also filled your life with music. You certainly took so many opportunities.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
For me, I did a bit at Trinity Rep. Actually, I only did one thing at Trinity Rep, West Side Story, and it was the first time where I had been hired for a 7-week run of West Side Story. And I remember thinking, okay, this is a good test. Can I do the same show for 7 weeks? And I could. I loved it.
You sure can. You could do 1,000.
Many weeks, yeah. And I also, even when I was in New York, the first year or two, I came back and played at Theater by the Sea. And I love that place. It's a small pit. Actually, it was the one time I played on stage was at that theater. And the summer stock is great because you're getting top-notch performers who are like, I know a lot of Broadway people they've all done summer stock at all these places. Actually, one of my colleagues at Phantom, who was one of the Phantom understudies, he did Theater by the Sea like decades ago. So those are the two places I can think off the top of my head that I absolutely love.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I was going to also say Theater by the Sea, and that's not something that I really knew about in college. Maybe I did, like towards my senior year. I think I started seeing shows there with my mom and family. And yeah, that place is amazing if you guys don't know or like have been there. They do usually like 4 shows every summer, and yeah, they bring in so many Broadway people, cast, and they're amazing. They put on wonderful productions, so that is great. And where I worked, the Newport Playhouse, fantastic. So what you do over there is you go and you have dinner there, and then you go into another room where it's a small theater, and you watch a play. It's usually like an hour and a half. And then after that, you go back into the dinner seated area, and you can have dessert and drinks, and you watch a cabaret. And I worked at the cabaret. They have like a house pianist and drummer there, and then a cast, and we do various songs from Broadway musicals. So that was, huge for me. That was my introduction to everything theater and the culture of it, and I love that. So that's ginormous. Yeah, those two for me for sure.
One more question up front.
Jesse.
Hi.
We went to high school together.
Yes, we did.
So my question for both of you, you talked about obviously like 3,000 shows and, you know, sometimes it getting repetitive, but obviously there's some downtime you guys have during shows. So more of like a fun question. What's the weirdest thing that you've done mid-show? Like I know you said you read and whatever. Like what's the weirdest thing you've done mid-show?
Yeah, well, okay, at Mr. Saturday Night, we were on stage, and this was, you guys, they came to see it, these two right here, they came to see the show. And like, we're only seen a couple of times, like at the beginning of the show, where there's like a live band, and then they put down this scrim and you can't see us. So in those moments when you couldn't see us, oh my goodness, there was a bunch of things going on back there. And like, there's one point in the show where Billy Crystal's character, he's on a television show, it's the $100,000 pyramid game show, and he has to answer these rapid fire questions. So, and we had 6 players in the band. It was me on drums and percussion. We had the music director on piano, a bassist, low brass player playing a few different low brass instruments, and trumpet player, flugelhorn, playing a few brass instruments, and did I say, and guitarist. And they didn't have enough, I guess, in the budget to hire a 7th musician. They wanted a percussion book, so since we didn't have the 7, they split up percussion between myself, the trumpet player, the guitarist, and the trombone player, so which was very interesting. So when that thing was down, during the $1,000 pyramid scene, the talk show host goes, "Ready, and your time starts now." And our guitarist would have to get up and play a xylophone very steadily. Tick, took, tick, took, tick, took, tick. And it went on for a while, because Billy Crystal would like go off and like do some crazy things every night, and go on a tangent. So our music director would get up, and while he was doing it, and like just stare at him while he was doing tick, took, tick, took, and trying, just like doing so many different pranks back there. It was absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, when you can't be seen, sometimes we get creative.
I have 2 quick things. There's a lot, but personally, in Mary Poppins, since we were pretty much hidden, me and the other trumpet player had like super intense games of air hockey, and I mean it got real intense. And like the one thing I noticed when I first got in there was how everyone was speaking at like full volume, because in that pit you didn't really need to be. So we could kind of like really go off. And so we did a lot of air hockey in between rests. But one of my favorite things when you said that he was staring, was one of the shows I was in, there's a moment where someone climbs up a ladder, and he's like a gunman, and he's waiting to climb the ladder, and then the audience is like right here. And he's waiting for, I don't know, a good minute or 2. And when this particular person went on, he would climb up the ladder just underneath, and the conductor is here, and he would just stare at the conductor. Deadpan for about a minute or 2. And the conductor's like, okay. And then when he went up, the music stopped, and then the conductor would take his baton and stick it up the leg, and the guy is, the front row is here, and he's like saying, "Yes, sir," and the conductor is like, with this, and I could never be an actor, because I break way too easily. This guy is the ultimate pro, and he never broke, saying his lines, and
Hello, you gotta make it fun.
Okay, well, I thank you all so much for coming. I think this has just been utterly delightful. So,
Thank you all. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Anna, and everybody, Eve, Mark. Thank you guys for making this happen. Very special for us to come back here, so we appreciate it.